Okay, we'll bring the meeting to order. So let's go ahead and go around and make introductions, who you are and your institution real quickly. Go ahead, Pranesh, you can start.
Roderick Crowder, faculty, Richland College, Dallas County Community College District.
I'm John Eckert, University of Texas at Austin.
Forrest Flocker, University of Texas, Permian Basin.
Martin Connect, South Texas College.
Mindy Nobles, Coordinating Board.
Denise Martinez, Tarleton State University.
Larry Larson, Texas State University.
Shia Lin, Prairie View A&M University.
Dan Lindley, Del Mar College, Corpus Christi.
Dan McDonald, Kilgore College, Kilgore.
I'm Mike McGinnis at University of Texas at Tyler.
Eddie O, A&M Commerce.
Vic Saloom, Lamar University.
Gary Tomerlin, Coordinating Board.
Rex Peebles, Coordinating Board.
Thank you. Okay, and just a couple of quick reminders. Don't forget to turn your mic on and off when you're speaking. And also, did everybody sign in on the sign-in sheet? Everybody didn't? Okay, are there any corrections to the minutes of the last meeting? Robert, John?
I think my name's misspelled a number of places. It's E-K-E-R-D-T.
And I do have a correction, or at least a clarification. Now, I don't have a copy of the minutes. Yes, I do, right before me. Early on in the meeting, I am quoted here as having said courses that are included in the engineering FOS, the receiving institution must give credit for that specific designated FOS course. That is not an accurate characterization. In fact, the minutes should reflect that while you must find a way to give credit toward the degree, you may do so by substituting a course in receiving institution's curriculum with same content. So let us not give the impression that it must be the specific ACGM course that is attached to the receiving institution's curriculum upon transfer.
Does that mean if we don't have an equivalent course, we just have to find a place for it?
That would be the case, but let's reserve that discussion for that section of, let's go ahead and get minutes approved now. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other edits? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Okay.
With the amendments.
Okay. All right, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, the minutes passed. Okay, so our first order of business is that we need to elect a two-year college co-chair to come sit right here. So we are now accepting nominations for, floor is open for nominations for two-year chair. Dan?
Yes, I'd like to nominate Roderick.
Roderick? You accept the
I
nomination?
second.
Okay, Dan. Other nominations?
Okay, I'm out of here.
Call for a motion acclamation.
Yes. So, I guess we need a motion for accepting Roderick by acclamation. I didn't move it.
I move we accept his nomination by acclamation.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Roderick, congratulations.
Railroad accomplished.
And sir, if you would please take the hot seat.
Oops, sorry.
He took both. Roderick took both parts. No pressure. Ready? Okay. The next order of business is any public testimony on the agenda items. And I don't see anybody, so there's none. So at this point, we're about to commence with the discussion. Yes, sir.
Are we on the,
Yes.
are there any questions coming from there?
We haven't set up an apparatus for questions from the field live during the meeting. We did that when we had the meeting that addressed public comments after the initial recommendation, but it's not a standard procedure in meetings.
Okay, so before we move forward on the discussion of the different tracks and topics, I'm going to let Mindy jump in. We would like to, since we're getting fairly close on these, to try to come to closure as quickly as we can on these issues so we can stop meeting on these things. So Mindy?
I will, yes. I said in my email to you 2 or 3 weeks ago that we are hoping to wrap up the committee's business before the first set of terms expire on membership seats, which will come in March. And I'll go on to comment, this meeting, or this committee, has been meeting for almost 2 years. You were the first committee formed after we began our Fields of Study initiative. Your meetings, though this has been a long process, have been productive in several ways. One way is that you have elucidated several issues that are going to be attendant to any field of study consideration. One, the pressure for universities with fields of study coming into being and becoming more widely used, and the semester credit hour cap. You find yourselves pressed to accommodate fields of study. We recognize that. Second issue, ACGM matters. We've looked at a good many ACGM courses that, as described, don't meet requirements or curricula needs you have at receiving institutions. For this committee in particular, ABET concerns are a consideration. As intense and as unresolvable as some of our issues have seemed to be, we have made great progress and coming to understand better the issues that fields of study committees face has been a good outcome of this. I wanted to put this committee's work into perspective. You were the first. Over the past year, we've either formed or have in the process of forming advisory committees to review the 9 existing fields of study that have been on the books since the early and mid-2000s. One of those fields of study has been approved with some revisions as a result of a committee. That was Mexican-American Studies. We have one more revised curriculum pending approval. That would be the nursing field of study. We have, in addition, formed or are forming 2 new fields of study for disciplines. Those would be architecture and, are we calling it drama or performing arts? I'm trying not to be dramatic about it.
Probably drama.
Okay.
Because performing arts,
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
which is a separate field.
Yes. Did we wrap up music? And let me just address that. Are we still, okay, so add that to the list. And we have, additionally, we have an architecture field of study pending approval. So we've been busy with available resources. This is a priority with the legislature. When our staff testify before the legislature, and Rex can attest to this, it never fails that a legislator says to the staff person testifying, I hear from my constituents that their students' hours don't transfer. Or the legislator says, my daughter's hours didn't transfer, which somehow makes it a more acute problem. I'm never sure why it's more acute when it's, you know, your own daughter, but so it's a priority with the legislature. And we are ramping up this initiative. We've dedicated existing staff time to it. We will be hiring 2 new staff over the coming year to work on fields of study and programs of study which pertain to 2 years. Fields of study certificates coming out of 2-year colleges are currently only about 3% of the degrees and certificates that are attained at 2 years every year. But that number is growing every year, and we expect to see them continue to grow in future years, especially as this initiative kind of permeates the awareness of higher ed in the state. Fields of study are consistent with 2 of the 3 priorities of the state's higher education strategic plan. And I'll come back to this committee and say again, we're hoping that we can wrap up your business before March comes. We have lost 3 committee members. Connie Gomez of Galveston College, Terry Reed of A&M, and Dave Galley of Collin College have left the committee for various reasons. Most of your work is done. What you have remaining, I hope we can do in the spirit of cooperation, resolving issues and addressing concerns as we go. And I hope additionally that we can do it, if nothing else, in the spirit of get her done, as I hear said among Texans. And I want to make one final note. We've had some confusion about what kind of rules we may make motions and vote under. The idea of consensus has been floated. This committee is bound by Robert's Rules of Order. The coordinating board itself is, and by extension, its advisory committees are, unless they formally adopt a different means of motion-making and adopting. So just to get that clear, let's, as we've done for most of this committee process, continue to follow Robert's Rules of Order, since that did come up in the last meeting. And those are all my notes. Denise, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. So at this time, we will move on to agenda item number 5, discussion of the subcommittee recommendations for the field of study track in civil engineering, including any ACGM-related recommendations. Civil engineering is at the bottom of the handout that was on your table in front of you, the one that's not in a outlined table. Rex and Gary, would you like to add anything to the committee while they're reviewing?
Well, I think as Mindy said, the importance of the work, I think we've talked about that many times over the time the group has gotten together, and, thank everybody for their time, effort, energy, and the importance of the conversation for the state of Texas. I mean, we know it's a big conversation, but it's very important, and that we just kind of add that onto Mindy's comments.
And I really can't add anything to that except to echo Gary's sentiments about thanking all of you for your hard work and efforts on this. I know it's not an easy task, and so I do appreciate the time and effort that everybody's put into this.
Yes, sir. John?
Okay, so do you want us to comment on specific courses now? Is that appropriate for the civil engineering?
In the civil engineering? Yes.
Okay, so the challenges that we have two challenges with this. One is, and I'll mention them both, but one is really just I don't think it's just a concern, and that's the engineering 2402, engineering mechanics, which is dynamics, or 2302. We give our students a choice between dynamics and thermodynamics, and most choose thermodynamics, but if they came in with the dynamics, it would be acceptable. So I'm just pointing out that this limits opportunities, but it would be acceptable. It's the engineering 1.201, Introduction to Engineering, that for us is a problem. And the reason, there are multiple reasons, but let me read some of these. This is a 2-hour course instead of 3, and students taking this course, they need 3 hours of graphics, so there would be a deficiency. We require surveying is not covered in this course, and that leaves UT Austin with an ABET deficiency. There is a separate surveying course, but that's not on this list. It does not cover technical areas of civil engineering, which would not give students a background of all technical areas available to them in the major. There are other problems with this course that we have because environmental engineering is a first-year course which has a lab and has a chemistry requirement, and this course doesn't have this. And then the architectural engineering component of it all falls into this civil engineering. The architectural engineering component is project-based, and this doesn't have those elements. So this course creates a real problem for some of the reasons that many of the other introductory courses, the way in which our introductory course has, in civil engineering, our equivalent of this, has many different facets to feed into the way students come into this department and then specialize in these other degree programs, this does not provide the content that we feel is important for our students to succeed. And there are some of these deficiencies impact, as the example, surveying, and so this is why I don't think this course should, we do not want to see this course included on the field of study.
I would second the same issue. We have done away with ENGR 1201. We have replaced it with an engineering mathematics course that is taught internally. So we do not have an equivalent course in our curriculum. And that's about 3 years ago. It's not a recent development in ours.
Other discussions regarding any aspects or in addition for the Engineering 1201? Eddie?
Yeah, I was the chair of the subcommittee for civil engineering, and I don't know, everybody has the minutes from our last meeting, but when you look at page 8 and 9, it summarizes some of the issues that you guys just mentioned anyway. So I mean, from my point, I just want to point out that the chemistry 1411, the chemistry 1, was a little bit problematic because A&M College Station will not accept, so that was one issue. But as a subcommittee, we moved on. We wanted to have that chemistry 1 under the field of the study for civil engineering. And then ENGR 1201, the Introduction to Engineering. Yeah, we did realize that the UT Arlington and the UT Austin, does not have the right course for this. So it was a recommendation, but we asked a significant change on the ACGM learning outcomes, maybe even, come up with a committee to look at the course learning outcome of Introduction to Engineering course, and that was sort of an amendment. And then Mechanics of Material, ENGR 2332, that one has some issues because of the, some universities said, well, this one has to be junior level, this one has to be senior, sophomore level, and then prerequisite issues. And again, that in order to include the mechanics of material into this field of study for civil engineering track, the ACGM course learning outcome needs to be revised. That was what I remember from the subcommittee meeting. Thank you.
I work for a 2-year college, Tarrant County College, so I work with a lot of students. They don't really have role models at home who are engineers. A lot of them, they never actually talk to an engineer. They never had a chance to talk to an engineer. So I do think Introduction to Engineering is a very important first course for them to get to know what is engineering, what does engineers do. I came from industry. I worked in industry before. If you ask the background of all the members in a technical team or in a technical division, you'll find out they graduate from different schools. They have different engineering degrees. Even sometimes they graduate from different disciplines, but they all work in the same field. Like UT Austin or UT A&M, all different schools, you have a lot of difference in your curriculum requirement, but you all graduate lots of excellent engineers. So we should actually look, I think, for this course, we should look at more like a common skills and trainings and requirements for our students. If we emphasize on the difference in every school, we'll never actually come to something we can transfer. So as an engineer, there are some basic requirements like teamwork, like ethics, like analytical problem-solving skills. So if a company, they can hire a physics major, math major, electrical engineering major, mechanical engineering major, all work in the same team, that means there are some common requirements, which we should focus on.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because we did look at that specific issue, and the way we address that issue is looking at it from a mathematics point of view. Most of engineering is foundational basis is based on mathematics, so by using mathematics as a way to study engineering problems, whether they be electrical problems in mechanical or in computer science or in civil engineering, we are addressing that issue in a different way, in trying to bring all of the different aspects of engineering into the curriculum early on, but with the mathematics foundation. Before they take calculus and before they take all the other math courses, to bring in foundational mathematics from an engineering perspective. So your point is very important. I think they need to be exposed to different areas of engineering. And that was the initial intent of 1201, but not necessarily with a mathematics component. And so what we have been trying to do is to bring the math part into it, but at the same time address the issue of exposing students to all of the different areas of engineering at the same time. So this is something that I think what Eddie was talking about probably is a deeper discussion within the ACGM as to how we need to readdress this course and then come up with a way which all of us agree, both 2-year and 4-year institutions agree in how to implement this.
Rex?
I was on the ACGM committee when engineering, I think it was 1101 or 1201 was actually put into the ACGM, and it was originally conceived as a recruitment tool. And so the whole idea of the course at that time was to provide students, particularly those at community colleges who may not be exposed to engineering otherwise, would have some exposure to engineering and its fundamentals. And in that sense, it was really conceived as a kind of overall survey of engineering, if you will. Hence the Intro to Engineering course, like a lot of other intro survey courses are. And in following the discussions of the subcommittees and the committees associated with this, I think everyone is sort of raised the same issue, and that is that the course itself may have, to some extent, may have outlived its usefulness in a way as it was originally conceived, at least. And so, and because I think it was conceived at a time when there was very little, if any, engineering taught at community colleges, and it was a way of trying to introduce students to the idea and get them interested in it, perhaps. But with fields of study, you have a lot of engineering that at least can be taught at community colleges or taught at the lower division level, which I think would address the issue of the recruitment piece of trying to bring students who may be quite capable of being engineers but would otherwise not be exposed to it at the community college level. So it does seem to me that this is one of those that perhaps it needs to be put aside until we could convene a kind of, a sort of course description. We've done this with other courses where we look at learning outcomes, but we can also look at the course description of this thing and the learning outcomes associated with it, and then see if there is a course that would fit or better fit what everybody needs to actually do with the course itself.
Roderick?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I would say from Kilgore College, and I completely agree with Rachel, and I'll just add a little bit to it, it's our pipeline kind of. They're taking college algebra normally at the same time, and we give them 1201, and we look and see, are they ready for engineering, or do they even want to do engineering? So I think, and Rex said it correctly, I think it's actually, it needs to be beefed up more than it is right now. Right now, we don't do all that much. We do a lab. There is a lab requirement in it. So there is a lab, and I think that was mentioned earlier that there isn't a lab, but we do have a lab with it. But I think, and I just would say from Kilgore College perspective, and some of the 2 years that I hear, we're going to keep on teaching it because we really don't have a choice. with some of the students we get in. If you go to the four-year college and you say, I want to be a civil engineer, then you probably have the math background and you've thought about it. If you're in the two-year college, which a lot of the ones that we work with, they haven't really thought about it. Engineering sounds neat, sounds like more money. And honestly, I talk to them and say, well, why would you do it? And they say, well, it's neat and it's more money and I get to do hands-on and things like that. And then when I get, like I had 27 in my intro engineering this time, and I look at my statics coming in the spring, only about half of them are going to even have a chance of going to that. Others, we're talking about things that they would be much better at. Not that they can't do it, but they'll probably be better at other things. So it is a math issue, but in the two-year college, it's more than that. It's trying to make sure that we've got the right people that we're even sending to the next level at the two-year college, never mind the four-year college. So I'd like to see what Rex was saying, table what we're doing, because we're not getting anything accomplished on it. We've talked about this the last 3 times, and see if we can beef it up or do something with it that the majority of the four-year colleges would say, well, yeah, that's something they probably need to have before they come there. So I would agree with something like that.
Let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're saying, when you say table it, you don't mean the entire civil engineering recommendation. You mean simply 1201.
Yeah, we talk about 1201, we continue to talk about 1201, and we're really not getting anywhere on it. And I think it really does need to be revamped completely. We need to look at it, put more math in it, see whether it needs to be maybe a 3-credit hour, see if it stays at 2-credit hour. But honestly, and I'm not trying to talk for all the 2 years, but we're going to still teach it because we have to. I don't have a choice. I do not want to put folks into statics and Cal 1 and all that and give them a pipe dream that they're okay and they're going to be able to do this before I see how they're doing in college algebra, because this is the college algebra group that takes engineering 1201. Normally, they're not in Cal 1 by the time they're taking it. So I'm also watching seeing how that's going for them, keeping an eye on that, and then talking to other professors and seeing are they ready for this to do that, and then I can watch them work as a team in all of the lab things that we do. We do 4 different lab things. They're kind of just fun things, but they're not like a chemistry lab, but they do learn how to work together, and we see whether they can or not. So.
Well, I wanted to add and sort of follow on as the engineering 1201 course, and you're right. We've talked about this a lot, and it was one of the most contentious courses that came out of the first mechanical engineering subcommittee. I served on that committee, and it was still at odds when we came back around the second time to the tuning committees to try to do so. And the challenge was that there was very little consensus from the very beginning. It was a difficult course. Although it looked like the easiest course to create, it became the most difficult course to fashion because of all the institutional differences in the programs. What came out of it was the least common denominator of learning outcomes and acceptable the things that were acceptable to all the players involved. Now, as it got implemented, the challenge that happened was, and many of the receiving institutions early on, they had a place for engineering 1201, and later on, as their curriculums evolved, they didn't have it. The problem that exists for 2-year colleges is the flexibility is what's missing for us. The challenge isn't whether or not we can create and whether or not we can deliver the students. The problem is the lack of flexibility that exists for us to do so. I have to say that, I believe that there's some work needs to be done in engineering 1201, but I have 200 students in engineering 1201. Those students are transferring on to colleges, and and in many cases, it is the combination of 1201 along with some other courses that are receiving credit at the receiving institutions. There are very few receiving institutions that are taking engineering 1201 as it is. But they are taking Engineering 1201 plus another course as a substitution course in, in their curriculum. So the flexibility that would be given to us in order to do this allows us to craft programs and to craft pathways that would serve the interests of the four-year colleges. I am sort of remiss that as we continue to try to refine this, to fix it, we're creating less and less flexibility. I think in the discussion, we have to find a way to create more options for the colleges, the two-year colleges, to deliver coursework where they can still receive contact hour reimbursement. Because that's really because as he said, I'm pretty sure we would have to continue to teach 1201, but the question is, well, the students will still take it. We would probably find a way for those courses to transfer to our partner institutions, the ones that are in close proximity to us. But a wholesale change, it just may mean that the two-year colleges will no longer receive contact hour reimbursement for it, and I think that's where we would lose.
Just really quick, I think as a four-year institution, we use 1201. We like it. You mentioned recruiting students to engineering and how perhaps those days are gone, and we just don't see that we're still trying to recruit students to engineering, and they don't know quite whether they want to be a civil or a mechanical or a chemical or an electrical, and this course really helps with that. It helps with many of the things some of the other folks have said, so we really like the course. It could be stronger, it could be 3 credits perhaps, but we like the course.
I think one of the problems here is that all the other programs, so Field of Studies have rejected this, and now we're going to put this on to civil engineering, and it just doesn't seem appropriate to have an introduction to engineering course just in the civil engineering field of study.
I agree.
I agree too, and simply note that we've had this discussion 2 or 3 times already, as Dan noted, and I certainly remember from the electrical engineering one that we discussed it and chewed on it. So I'm sure that happened in almost every subcommittee. I think the direction we should take is to say that at this committee, at this level, we're not prepared to have 1201 in the engineering field of study, and therefore delete it from civil engineering. But at the same time, we probably should put a comment in or a direction that the ACGM take on the fight and work it. And all we can do is recommend, I assume. So we should make that recommendation, I would think.
So basically what it's coming to is, would one of y'all like to make a motion, formal motion regarding that, and we look further into the 1201 or not? But speaking just, for example, for our four-year institution, we're one of the ones that we would receive it as our intro class. A lot of what we do in our intro sequence is driven by the limit on the number of hours we have. We're had to force content back down in there. So now everybody has their own flavor of 1201. Sometimes it's got a little more electrical stuff in it, might have a little more statics type of stuff in it. So I think that's what makes it kind of hard to find one that everybody can agree on, is because we have our own flavor. But the intro is, the whole intro to the discipline concept is very important, because that's where they kind of figure out, is this a field that I might be interested in? So, motion? Go ahead. Formulate a motion.
Okay to motion pretty much what I just said?
Yes.
I would like to move that we delete engineering 1201 from any of the existing recommendations. Civil is the only one I know of that has it. And at the same time, make a suggestion or recommendation to the coordinating board and ACGM, whatever it is, that engineering 1201 be taken up, and good way to put it, updated to meet whatever the new committee would find acceptable at the larger scale. Make it sound good.
And just a quick note, we can remove it from civil, but the others have already passed, so we couldn't go back and change any of those like
I
that.
don't think any of the others have it.
So I don't think they do either.
No, none of them accepted it, so.
So move deletion of engineering 1201 from civil and a task force be developed to revamp the ACGM ENGR 1201.
May I remind the committee that you have already, at a previous meeting, approved the recommendation that an ACGM committee revamp 1201. You can just bring that motion forward as part of your package of recommendations to the coordinating board.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed? Okay. Okay, motion passes. Reinish?
Yes. I'd like to bring up two other issues as well. One is Math 2320, differential equations. Currently, our civil engineering department requires differential equations and linear algebra as a combined course. This particular course, I don't think has linear algebra as part of it. So my concern is whether when they come in, if they have to take linear algebra in addition, then that would be a 6-hour to 3-hour transfer, right? So that's a concern for us. The second part is the Chem 1411 that Eddie brought up as well. We have a chemistry for engineers. I believe there has been a separate subcommittee looking at the chemistry for engineers course. I don't know what the resolution on that particular discussion has been. I think when Terry and Denise, you guys, we had a subcommittee discussing that, whether that would replace the combination 1411, 1412.
No subcommittee has been formed by this committee. This committee can recommend development of chemistry for engineers. This committee can form a task group to develop a model for it, but we don't have an ACGM committee studying it. It had been discussed, over the past year by institutions, and we're aware of that, but no formal body exists right now.
Mindy, we had a meeting on April 28th. Would you call that just I had written it down as a chemistry for engineers subcommittee. It
Yes,
was prior to
that meeting was hosted by the coordinating board. It was a group of institutions, 2 years and 4 years, interested in seeing that taught and added to the ACGM. That has been the extent of the discussion, though. There's no body formed that's connected with the coordinating board itself that's creating that course.
So that was just a group of interested parties?
Yes.
Okay. I will call it that in my notes.
I wanted to add that I'm sorry.
Sorry, just a quick question. So did anything come out of that conversation in terms of recommendations or anything? I don't remember.
Yes, we had a number of discussions about that, and those of us who were in the 2-year and the 4-year institutions were supposed to go back and check on how interested our institutions would be. And we checked with our nearest institution, which was A&M Corpus Christi, and they said that they would under no way, shape, or form accept that course, period, which I didn't quite understand, but that stopped it right there. The point is I'm a chemistry faculty member, so I looked at it. There are some additional things which would be really good for engineering, of course, but is it essentially that much superior to 1411? I don't think so, but that's just me.
Can I make a comment on your other nearest institution, Texas A&M Kingsville, other than which takes more of your students, other than the chemical engineering department, We just had a discussion, and the rest of us will take the, chemistry for engineers. But we'll take either one of them, except for the chemical engineering department.
We're actually putting one into a chemistry for engineers. And with the chemical engineering, the issue is it not being sufficient for a prereq for organic. In our case, too.
What we found was that many of the students that were transferring on to the senior institutions that were requiring chemistry, and many of the senior institutions had, the engineering programs had, in essence, a chemistry for engineers. They were accepting and transfer students that were completing, University Chemistry 1 and, and 2. It was not just the first course in order to get credit for that. Now, it was at the end of the day, that turned into 8 credit hours for 4 credit hours, but it wasn't a difficult, in essence, it wasn't difficult to convince the students at the two-year colleges to take that because the cost differential was so high, so vastly different, they were willing to take the other 4 credit hour course anyway, and they were still prepared. Secondly, there is in the ACGM an introduction to chemical engineering thermodynamics. That's what they called it, coming out of the tuning committee. And that course was to teach, in essence, the rest of, in many ways, now I may be overstating this, for the students that are interested in chemical engineering, that was to follow on from what the students were learning in Chem 1 and Chem 2, and to begin the discussion about processes and things that were going to be relevant to students pursuing degrees in chemical engineering. I'm saying this that in the sense that we may have enough tools on the table, and I could be incorrect, but I think the addressing chemistry was met by students completing both courses and not simply just having Chem 1 from our perspective, because that's what we have seen over and over again for students that are transferring.
Yeah, if students have both Chem 1 and Chem 2, it's not an issue anymore. But the problem always is 8 hours for 4 hours, and that creates all kinds of issues. And that's where the Chem for Engineers came into place, where we combined the two and then made sure we had some things for example, electrochemistry, which is really not addressed, which is important for civil engineers. And that's incorporated in chemistry for engineers. So as long as if we are allowed to substitute 8 for 4, then we are fine. I don't see a problem. 1411, 1412 for 1465, which is our chemistry for engineers. But if we have to accept Chem 1411 for the overall chemistry, then the answer is no, because it doesn't meet our requirements.
Well, the civil engineering department was okay with this on the list. They didn't want to see engineering 1201 on the list, and that's the only pushback I got, so. No, if you took Chem 1 and Chem 2 and we accepted it as a chemistry course, there's no problem with that. The question is there enough content in one of these so that you only have to take one course? But that's not what they were being asked here, so.
Any motions related to chemistry? Yes, sir.
When we left that meeting, of course, Terry Reed was the one who was kind of pushing that, and A&M has a long history, about 20 years of offering this course in College Station. And I think where we would like to have gone with this is not to necessarily substitute 1411, because that's a different course for different people, but work with the ACGM to include this as another course in chemistry. And that is actually where I thought we left the action items, go back and check with our institutions, and then see if there's enough interest in it in order to get together and work with the ACGM committee to develop the outcomes, et cetera. So, I mean, it just kind of like stopped after that meeting.
I kind of feel maybe there's a way forward in terms of a recommendation for a motion. I'm not sure if I can make it anymore,
I would like to make a recommendation that this course, Chemistry 1411, 1412, be referred back to the ACGM for reassessment to come up with possibly a single 4-hour chemistry course that would be acceptable across all engineering disciplines.
Well, I don't think you want to refer necessarily Chemistry 1411 back, because 1411 serves a lot of disciplines, not just engineering. So what you may want to do is ask for a Chemistry for Engineers course then. So, I mean, I think that by itself would be simple enough to.
Maybe
Thank you. I'd like to amend my recommendation is to probably refer back Chemistry for Engineers as a possible course for ACGM to consider for engineering majors.
Would it be possible for me to add on to your amendment? And it's, and also to adopt 1411 and 1412 as the combination course that the students would need to take to receive credit for chemistry for engineers at the receiving institution. And in doing so, they would complete the body of
If
knowledge.
that's acceptable, I don't see a problem whatsoever that if students take 1411, 1412, we give them credit for 1465, which is chemistry for engineers. I don't see a problem with that if that's acceptable from the coordinating board point of view.
Okay, so would you like to state your motion?
The motion is to accept both 1411, 1412 together as equivalent to chemistry for engineers.
So you're proposing a task force to
look into
investigate a chemistry for
1411,
engineers, which
1412.
would be equivalent to
Yes.
1411, 1412 combo.
Common course.
Would it be possible to separate these two motions into separate things? Because you're combining two things which aren't really combinable, in my opinion.
Okay. Task force to investigate development of a chemistry for engineers.
Yes.
Period. Motion number one. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Can I call a question on this?
Absolutely.
I'm still not sure why we're doing this. I see 1411 only shows up on, right now, on civil engineering. Everyone else has voted it down.
It appears on mechanical as well. Nay, yes, thank you, it was voted down. Mechanical did recommend the addition of chemistry for engineers.
Chemistry 2 is in chemical, but it requires Chem 1.
But it also goes on to organic, which would be problematic, probably.
Electrical engineering.
Aren't we off
So
the subject a little bit, like you were saying? Shouldn't we be voting just on the civil engineering here?
Yeah, this
It seems like everybody is agreeing that 1411 is okay here. There may be a credit hour issue if you go on to 1412, but why don't we stay on the civil engineering for a minute and then talk about this chemistry for engineers here in a minute, because I don't think the majority of us are heading that way. I thought we were trying to figure out whether it's okay for 1411 to be in here.
Yeah, I guess what I would ask is, and I'd follow up on what Dan is suggesting here, is that we should consider 1411, the merits of 1411 for the civil field of study, and not get this all twisted around looking at 1411, 1412, because what's in front of us is 1411 for civil. And that's what the committees discussed.
The issue, though, of chemistry for engineers not to to completely throw it off the table is appropriate for a later portion of the agenda, so we can come back to that when we move to discussion and consideration of recommendation of changes. So, because that chemistry for engineers may then have made chemistry a more palatable contribution to other fields of study. There was disagreement between 1411 or 1412. And so there's some merit there in that.
Well, at the Prairie View, we do consider it a common chemistry required course, either civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical, or computer engineering. So for us, we cannot separate and discuss in a different discipline. We do use 1411, 1412 as a transfer to chemistry for engineer, just like UT Arlington. And we create internally a course, chemical for engineer class. That's for the student already have chemistry coming in to take the class. So therefore, I support we need to develop a course in chemical for engineers that will be universal, be transferred to all engineering disciplines.
So let's discuss that one in part 6, and for now, move back to, do you want Chem 1411 in the civil engineering field of study as it is proposed? Go ahead.
You can agree to table the motion, or you must vote it up or vote it down. You have those options.
Do we want to table it to the appropriate part of the agenda?
I move we table the motion to consider the 1411, 1412 chemistry for engineers until we get to discussion section 7.
Second.
Okay, issue resolved. Oh, sorry. All in favor? Sorry. Got ahead of myself. Any opposed? Okay, now the issue is resolved for now.
Who seconded?
Can I make a motion?
Please.
I move that, given the list of courses for civil engineering and the engineering field of study, that engineering 1201 is not on the list as we voted for early, and we approved the others as part of the field of study.
We already did that.
Did we do that? We haven't voted on this one.
1201?
We did vote on 1201, but we accept all but 1201. How's that?
No, if I could, I would like to voice my objection to mechanics of materials. Again, that's the one that doesn't have any prerequisites. It's a common course in engineering technology programs, and the way it's written in the ACGM, it could be taught as a engineering technology course, which would not satisfy ABET requirements. And right now, that course as written in the ACGM does not have prerequisites, for example, statics, and it does not have any learning outcomes. It's got a short course, a one-sentence description, but it doesn't have any learning outcomes, and it doesn't have any prerequisites. I mean, believe me, you don't want this in your program.
I agree that the problem with there is a problem with the prerequisite for mechanics and materials. As a matter of fact, in our institution, in our curriculum process, we're actually allowed to add to the prerequisites but not take away from them. So we've actually required 2301 as a prerequisite for mechanics and materials, but the course is being accepted by several institutions from us with the prerequisite, but we have set a prerequisite of engineering 2301. I wasn't aware that it did not have learning outcomes. I thought it did in the ACGM.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ACGM right now, and it doesn't have them, and I looked at just before I came to this meeting, that has not been updated. It's really not an appropriate engineering course. There's no, it wouldn't even require calculus.
Well, I said we have the ability to add prerequisites. So we have added the prerequisite of 2301, which requires calculus.
The point is, it's not just your community college.
Understood.
Any community college could offer the course, and we would be forced to take it without a calculus prerequisite or statics prerequisite or any learning outcomes.
Dan?
Well, I think we all agree, okay? So I think the way forward in this thing here is we can offer ACGM type of recommendations coming out of this. I think by the next meeting, we need to have a subgroup working on this, bring a properly formulated, ABET approvable, and student learning outcome that will work for this. And we could bring that to the next meeting and voting on it. My understanding is if we approve something like that, then doesn't it go straight to the coordinating board?
Yes, it does. Any recommendations regarding an ACGM course that go forward with a field of study recommendation are approved with the approval of the field of study.
The only problem is that then we're at the mercy of the subcommittee to develop the outcomes and the prerequisites and so forth.
If you form a task group out of this committee, to work on it, you will approve, they'll bring back to you whatever they come up with, and you will approve it or add to it or change it. This committee will ultimately approve any changes to 2332.
There is the other issue that we offered as a upper level course, and now we moved down to the lower level, and so we're getting to the point where we keep adding all these courses as acceptable at the lower level, and then we're having a hard time filling 60 hours in the upper level programs. Now, this is one of those courses that's taught either last semester, sophomore year, first semester, junior year.
We've already done this. Mechanical engineering, if you look at it, we've accepted a mechanical engineering.
No, in fact, I wanted to bring that issue up too, because I printed out the sheet, and then this morning, if you look at what's printed out, it has it stricken.
I understand. I don't disagree. But why go through doing this writing? Why don't we just write this in under civil engineering? You see what I'm saying? Add prerequisites, Cal 2, statics, develop appropriate learning outcomes. We've already done this. We've done it for one, then I don't think we need to keep on rehashing what we're doing. I agree with all you're saying. If that's what, then why don't we strike it because we struck it here, up there in mechanical engineering, and write that in there so it'll apply to both.
I'm just concerned that it would apply. Is that what you're saying, that it would apply automatically?
Mechanical engineering is going forward. It's already been approved by this committee with that caveat.
Not been approved?
Yeah, it's stricken.
Well,
but we'll look at it later.
You're missing what I'm saying. The field of study for mechanical engineering, and it was taken out, but the added changes are already there. So we're already looking at 2332. So I agree, it shouldn't be here either. If we're going to keep this thing making sense all the way through it, then that shouldn't be there, and we should have the caveat, or we should put no, not adopted, and then put the same thing that's written into mechanical engineering.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Then I understand that a later committee would vote to include it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a new motion?
Yeah, I would make a motion, we can accept the civil engineering or adopt it, or however we want to put the words. We take out introduction engineering for now because we want to look at that as a whole, and also mechanics and materials, and then write in looking at the prerequisites of Cal 2 and statics, the same thing that's written up there in the mechanical engineering. but not adopt it at this point, because I don't think we're ready to do that.
So you're making the motion to
motion?
strike that?
Let's take that one out, 2332, as well as 1201, but under mechanics and materials, to develop some appropriate learning outcomes and look at some prerequisites for it.
So are you moving approval of civil without those two?
Yes.
Would you say those words?
I'll second.
I say we approve civil engineering, or adopt it, taking out engineering 1201, because we're going to look at it from a committee perspective, and the same thing with 2332, because we're going to also look at that one from a committee perspective.
And then I'll second.
Okay.
I have a question about chemistry. Did we decide on that one?
Tabled it.
We what?
We tabled it.
Well, that's not what that motion included.
No, we tabled the consideration of
Chemistry
chemistry
engineers.
for engineers, considering a chemistry for engineers in lieu of or as a placeholder for 1411. 1411 is not chemistry for engineers. 1411 is 1411.
Barring that passing, Chem 1411 is still sufficient here, is what they're saying.
That's not what they were saying.
When we vote on this, we're not voting for chemistry 1411 as part of the...
Yes, it's on the list.
Taking
Okay.
2332 out.
Okay,
Dan.
well, the other one that I did bring up earlier was the differential equations. I am not sure if there is any support for the linear algebra component of differential equations, or are the rest of the members okay with this differential
Let's deal with
equation?
one thing.
Okay, we'll deal with them.
Yeah. It's a dead. It's accepted. Motion passes.
Civil passes.
We're only doing the removal of 2332.
Now, the motion was to go ahead and accept the civil engineering and just take those two out.
A concern, if there is support generally for differential equation the way it is, then there's nothing else I can do about it. We'll just vote on it and be done with it. If there is room for discussion, then I would like to bring it up to see if linear algebra should be part of that course or no.
Well, there's room for discussion, and you can offer an amendment to the motion that's on the table.
Yeah, can I make an amendment to that motion that we also consider linear algebra as part of the differential equations course, as replacing the 2320 differential equations for civil engineers?
I'll second.
Now, the differential equations course here, there is a linear algebra course at the ACGM also.
Yeah, separate.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get the combined, there isn't a
No,
combined.
the concern is if we accept this, then we have to ask students to take the linear algebra part. Then it
Right.
becomes a 6-hour for 3-hour substitution.
Right.
That's the concern.
I believe the amendment has to be approved by the whole group, right?
Any amendment will need a second, and the group will have to vote to approve the amendment to the motion that's on the table.
Well, yeah, that is part of the ACGM already. There is a course that is equivalent to that. That's a differential equation and linear algebra. This is a separate course that we're considering. If you want to replace this, the other course, which is differential equations and linear algebra, then I'm fine.
I feel like
What is the rubric and the number on the course you want to replace it with? I mean, if we're going to, I mean, I would like to be clear about exactly what we're doing here. So what is the,
It's
I'm looking at it.
2321, 2421. One's a 3-hour version, the other's a 4-hour version, but it combines differential equations and linear algebra.
That's what I thought
It's
it was.
2321 is the 3-hour version, 2421 is the 4-hour.
So you're proposing to replace 2320, Math 2320, on this civil engineering curriculum with Math 2321 or 2421? Sure. Okay.
I do.
I think a problem we would have, or we might have, is that our math group won't take DE plus linear algebra as DE.
We had the same challenge. The students that were transferring, that were taking, they had a pathway. They could take differential equations and they could take linear algebra, or they could take differential equations and we had an applied linear algebra in engineering, but they could not take the combined course for differential equations and linear algebra for the same reason. Mathematics would not accept it either as credit for differential equations, or they wouldn't accept it as credit for linear algebra. They got one, but not both. So in order for our students to bridge that gap, they had to take differential equations plus linear algebra, or if they required differential equations plus applied linear algebra, but they could not take the combined course that exists in the ACGM. There was no place anywhere for that course to transfer. No senior institution was taking that to give them credit for either the combined course, which was usually a 3,000 level course, or either one of the, or only one of the undergraduate courses, the lower division courses. So they could get credit for linear algebra, differential equations, but they would never get credit for the combined course at the four-year institution.
Is that true in all the four-year institutions? That's not the case for us. I know
The case
we
for
have
us.
combined the two together.
No, it's true for us. We have, the two courses are separate, and we only accept, they'll have to take another math class, either linear algebra or differential equations, whichever one.
Well, with this option, by accepting the differential equation linear algebra, they can still take the second course at your institution. But if they take only one of these differential equations, then they don't have an option to transfer it in. So that's,
Is this the type of issue that can be handled as an advising issue at the two-year institutions? And with a note that says you might want to take this class instead of this class to transfer it directly? The DE plus linear algebra instead of the DE? Rachel?
I just have a question for all the four-year institutions. How many of you are teaching the combination now instead of the two separate math courses? Because in my, to me, the differential equation and linear algebra for mathematics contents, they're totally different. I never understand why they're taught in one course. But I just want to know, maybe this is something I don't know. At the four-year schools, how many of you're teaching the combination instead of the two separation courses?
So
part of it came about because of the need to reduce credit hours for the curriculum down to 120. So we had to combine these two classes to incorporate all our upper division engineering courses into our curriculum. So that's where that came from some years ago.
let's go ahead and vote on the amendment to the motion, amending, changing the DE to the DE plus linear algebra amendment. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hands. Roderick also. All opposed, please raise your hands, say no. Okay, so the amendment fails, but the motion that has been out there and seconded is approve civil engineering without engineering 1201 and 2332. Are we ready to move forward on a vote, or is there further discussion?
I don't think we discussed chemistry yet. Not an amendment. as part of the chemistry. I move, I add amendment to. Oh, I'm sorry. I move to remove chemistry 1411 from civil engineering course list. Because we need to further discuss the chemistry for engineers class, which can be universally accepted by all the engineering program. At this time, our civil engineering department will not accept 1411 as a part of a chemistry requirement.
Shield, I have a question. Is that the same, is your problem, the concern about accepting this, is that the same problem at Texas A&M and College Station? Do they have the same challenge?
Yes, that's the same.
Can I second the motion?
So Pranish, you did second. And so then, can I ask this committee a question? I'm just wanting to make sure I'm clear. Because I don't understand the difference. With mechanical, you did remove it, and you added in a to-be-developed chemistry for engineers. Okay. With civil engineering, you're simply proposing to remove it, and you want to come back later and consider chemistry for engineers.
It's pretty consistent. In mechanical engineering, we say no to
Yes.
chemistry 1411.
But at the same time, you did, with your final recommendation at the April meeting, add a chemistry for engineers, whatever that course designation will be.
Yes.
Is that what you're proposing to do with this one, or is your amendment simply to remove chemistry 1411?
We can do the same as mechanical engineering subcommittee recommended to develop chemistry for engineer as proposed by Texas A&M.
Okay, so are you then proposing an amendment to remove chemistry 1411 and replace it with a to-be-developed chemistry for engineers?
Yes.
Okay.
Did we have a second on that? Okay. Oh.
One of the points here I'd like to raise, though, is as taught by Texas A&M University, does that just kind of tie us directly into what they've done? Or, I mean, it's fine to look at it, but I think we ought to look at it.
When that committee did get together that one time back in April, that was just sort of our baseline to go by. So it's not necessarily as taught by them, but that was a good starting place. So I don't think we're saying take theirs. We're saying develop one.
And let me continue to clarify here. I'm not sure that Pranish seconded removing Chem 1411 with the understanding that a chemistry for engineers substitute.
Withdraw my second because I think this new palatable, have an open discussion.
Yes, so the current amendment is remove Chem 1411 and propose with the same verbiage as mechanical has a chemistry for engineers subcommittee that could potentially replace it, right?
Well, if this committee asks, as part of its recommendation, for a chemistry for engineers, and if this committee sends that forward, and it is accepted by the coordinating board, it becomes part of the field of study, and the ACGM adds that course. Now, you don't have a defined course for chemistry for engineers. It would be up to a task group of this committee to develop a model for that course. Now, that would be, some work to get done. You would need to define it. Otherwise, we just have a rubric and a number in the ACGM and no course description. So that is the implications of adding it here and indeed to mechanical. So I just want you to be clear in what you're doing here. And my real question was, are you intending to act consistently with your actions for mechanical, or did you intend something different here, simply to remove chemistry 1411?
My intention is consistent with mechanical engineering subcommittee.
Okay, so do we have a second to that motion? Are you second? Okay. Okay, let's vote on that amendment. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Wait, I have a question.
Oh, yes, sir, sorry.
This has been rephrased so many times. What exactly are we voting on?
Okay, we are voting on the amendment to the motion to remove Chemistry 1411 and propose a Chemistry for Engineers subcommittee to develop a course, which, if adopted, that'll replace it. It'll become part of it.
And I'm going to ask that you clarify your language. A subcommittee would require a statewide call for nominations. You're talking about a task group of members of this committee, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So, John, what we're proposing...
Can I ask for the specific wording in the minutes where where I can read what we've agreed to for mechanical engineering? I can't find that.
Yes, sir, on your mechanic, well, that may not be in the minutes, though. I mean...
Well, I want to know what the wording is that we seem to be agreeing to or not. So I'm looking in the minutes from, 29, April of 29.
Like perhaps on page 14, a motion by Crowder, seconded by Andrea.
That was the electrical engineering course. It wasn't the chemistry on 14.
Here it is.
I see bottom of page 15. Wait, changes in... Okay, look at the top of page 16. Is this it?
The engineering 2305, that's electric circuits? Yeah,
2305 is circuits.
right, so that's not what we're looking for.
Add chemistry for engineers.
Oh, yeah, and then, and remove, okay.
Add chemistry for engineers, chemistry, called it 1412.
That doesn't show up on this page.
Yeah, it's page 14.
Yeah, I see that, but it doesn't show up on this summary.
That's UTA's number. I think, what is the...
Chemistry, this note Chem 1412 with question mark is somebody's question. I think that can just be stricken. That this is, you're looking at a rough draft of the notes. Just disregard that.
What did we do?
That's the question. Right there, you're looking at top of 14?
The paragraph that says modify the existing mechanical.
Engineering agreement.
I see at the bottom of page 15, additionally, the prerequisites addition. And that is what you passed. You removed it from the field of study, and you had recommendations to add the prerequisites. Well, that was, that down here, the further discussion of mechanical at the bottom of page 15. Learning outcomes were discussed. I just don't see in the
That's
notes where those are. 2332.
Right, but this is the paragraph regarding.
So Mindy, on this table that you put in front of us today, on mechanical engineering, there are 2 rows at the bottom. One, the bottom row says with no AGCM number, and you go over several columns, and it goes develop chem 14 question mark chemistry for engineers. So we didn't approve a course, that's a recommendation. If this is what I understand, we did for mechanical engineering.
Yes.
And we struck 1411 as a field of study course.
Yes, and that's what we're proposing, that's the motion that's on the
It's
table.
not the motion we're proposing, is it?
Yes.
That's the amendment to the motion.
That's the amendment to the motion.
So the
yes.
amendment to the motion is to strike 1411 and to have a recommendation to consider this course for
Correct.
future adoption.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand.
Count 11.
All opposed to the amendment, please raise your hand.
Any abstentions?
Abstentions?
She asks.
Okay, the amendment passes. So now the motion on the table was approve civil engineering without engineering 1201, without ENGR 2332, and with the amendment of remove 1411 and propose a chemistry for engineers task group, develop a chemistry 14 question mark to replace it with the same verbiage as the mechanical. Any discussion on? Yes, sir.
As probably the only chemistry faculty member here, I'd like to kind of jump in slightly on this. 1411 and 1412 serve a wonderful purpose. We have a lot of people who take those courses. Obviously, for something like chemical engineering, we did discuss this with Terry at that point. We could take that course, then follow with 1412. I don't think that would be an issue for anybody. But the depth of what you're getting out of that is not the same as taking 1411 and 1412. It's kind of ludicrous to think that a one semester course is going to be equal to a full year. A lot of community colleges are going to have maybe a little bit of trouble offering that course. And just because there's not as many as we'd like to have, well, Roderick here has 200 students in his 1201, but we don't have that many students taking engineering at Del Mar. We have a lot, but not that many. So yeah, we could offer this maybe once a year, and I'm happy to help develop it. I want to, as a matter of fact. I think it's interesting. But we've got to be careful that we're taking away from the main purpose of what we teach chemistry for. You know, and 1411 is other than 2 institutions, has been fine for mechanical engineering. So, you know, we want to be very careful we don't tailor this thing just for very specific schools and very specific purposes. And to say that we're going to move away from 1411, and I'd want to be part of that task group if it forms, of course, but does that mean we're going to recommend that 1411 doesn't exist anymore? What are we going to be telling our students that with the advising perspective? It's gets a little bit more interesting for us, that's all. Just a comment.
Yeah, I feel Daniel's concern. The way the practice we do at our campus is we only recommend a student had another chemistry before this chemistry for engineer class. Either the student have taken a course like AP chemistry in high school, get good grades, we know they have some foundation of chemistry. Then coming to the college, they be able to follow through from their prior knowledge. So we don't recommend any student without a prior chemistry to take the class.
I would certainly echo the agreement, but I don't believe that in, you know, the spirit of this is to actually kill chemistry. From our from the discussion that we had previously, I think more of the challenge was the removal of chemistry because it did not meet the body of knowledge that many of the receiving institutions were requesting. And that motion, we did not really get into that. I should mention that they were willing to accept chemistry 1411 and 1412 as the total body of knowledge for the students that are pursuing chemistry. We didn't take up that matter. The discussion moved toward the creation of a chemistry for engineers course. I think from an advising perspective, that's still being met because our students are taking Chem 1 and Chem 2 that are going into disciplines like mechanical and civil. It's that, and I also agree with you that we need to maintain, as I said, and I've been a proponent of this from the beginning, maintain the flexibility that we have to deliver the coursework in a manner that's going to meet the needs of the students. The more options that we have as two-year colleges, the better we're going to be able to serve that. I believe that, now this is solely the engineer talking, and I understand that UT Arlington and many of the other senior institutions, as well as us, have the same downward pressure to reduce the number of credit hours that students are taking. So that is why chemistry for engineers and many other courses have been created at the senior institution level. That's why it's challenging for us because we're having to have students take more credit hours to receive less credit hours at the senior institution. Currently, the system is working. The checks and balances are working. Now, if we break that, then it becomes almost untenable for us to teach the courses because now we have a credit hour configuration problem. So as it stands right now, I think that either moving that from an advising perspective, we don't kill chemistry because if the institutions cannot offer them, and I'm certainly not, proposing these things because it helps me out because I have a lot of students. Like I said, I need flexibility like you need flexibility. The more classes that are in the ACGM, the more flexibility I believe that we will all have to deliver the programs for our specific needs. So I wanted to mention that. I don't think that we're doing something terribly wrong by removing it, but I think later on we have to address it in a manner that is going to work for the two-year institutions. Because we are creating the outcomes that the senior institutions need, but we need the flexibility on our end.
We're currently,
I just wonder, is it possible, because this is a recommendation, 1411, consider an engineering course, is it conceivable that, it's 1411 or 14XX is acceptable as a final outcome of this, and then this introduces flexibility back because many of the institutions find 1411 acceptable and others don't. So, I mean, that's a potential outcome of this, I would think.
One of the, I think if we put ors, then they'll all take the easier one, the 1411. But our experience is that, and we're actually developing in-house now, right now, a Chemistry for Engineers course. And it's more than 1411, but it's not as much as 1411, 1412. Not as much as 1412, so it's sort of a compromise class. So should a student change their major, go to something else, it doesn't count as 1412. However, the other direction, a student has to have 1412. Like if our students transfer to A&M, they have to have 1412 in order to have Chemistry for Engineers. So it defaults back to 1411 credits. So now they've had 1411 that's sort of a bigger, deeper, I don't know if it's deeper, but it covers more topics. So the or may confuse the issue more.
And John, to answer the or question, is that the universities have to deal with a student who has either one of them. And so you could perhaps have a conversation about that it's an advising issue and that, Tarrant Southeast is going to advise all the UTA students to take engineering for chemistry, and that might work out great until the student who is planning on going to UTA decides to go elsewhere and it doesn't work. That's the problem with an or, because an or, it's a $5 bill or 5 ones, it's still the same. But in this case, y'all are saying the or is not, yeah.
I have a thought. I have an amendment motion thought. Actually, this will maybe make it better, I hope. Because our current motion is to remove 1411 in favor of creating Chemistry for Engineers.
Motion now is just...
To vote on that.
41 and 2332.
The amendment.
My,
Okay, the amendment passed, so the current motion is the approval of civil engineering without engineering 1201, without engineering 2332, and with the amendment of remove Chem 1411 and propose the Chemistry for Engineering task group.
That's right.
Okay,
So
but
this-
that has not been voted on.
So that's what's to be
Motion
voted.
has not been voted on.
So the amendment is to merely modify the Chemistry 1411 and...
Roderick, I'm sorry.
And, I'm sorry, to have Chemistry 1411, 1412, or the development of Chemistry for Engineering as the suitable substitute for mechanical engineering, because several of the receiving institutions that are in civil have a body of knowledge problem. There's not enough content. To solve that, they want Chemistry for Engineering, which is a course that currently doesn't exist. Without that, the course chemistry cannot stay in here because of other colleges are unwilling to accept it on its own. So I believe this strikes the common ground because 1411, 1412 is the equivalent to Chemistry for Engineers that many colleges will accept. If later on we're able to create the combined course for Chemistry for Engineers at the 2-year level, then that also becomes an option for students that are pursuing engineering. Because students in all other disciplines will still have to take Chem 1 and Chem 2. Students that are following engineering tracks may be able to take these 2 separate courses or this newly developed Chemistry for Engineers. So the amendment is to place Chem 1 plus Chem 2 or Chemistry Engineers as the option.
I believe the amendment to the civil engineering track, as I understand it, is for the time being with regard to chemistry simply to remove
That's correct.
1411.
That's correct.
In your motion, you are back to, I'm going to kind of play the parliamentarian here, you're back to voting on the civil engineering FOS track with these stipulated amended changes. You have to vote this motion up or down or suggest other amendments to it, but you have approved removing 1411.
But we haven't approved the motion.
Correct.
But the motion of civil without has not been yet approved.
Correct.
So this amendment would put it back in and 1412, or, this is getting a little complex, chemistry for engineers,
So,
which makes it a little hard to,
so Roderick, are you proposing to amend the civil engineering FOS track to include 1411 plus 1412?
Yes, or chemistry for engineers. In lieu of removal of, to stand in place of the removal of 1411. I don't know what, I withdraw the motion. I thought about it.
And if I can offer some guidance, maybe, and I think Mindy has pointed this out, under the mechanical recommendation, this group has already said we need to consider a chemistry for engineers. That is going forward. It's already been voted on and approved. I would maybe recommend to you that you withhold any additional consideration about a chemistry for engineers, because that's going to happen. That conversation is going to happen, period. And so if you limited your motions to either the acceptance of the civil engineering where you are now, you've already voted the 2 courses out, or a motion to vote out a third course or other courses, chemistry, I assume, I think you could probably move forward more succinctly, but then don't you already have the motion of chemical engineering accepted? But trying to maybe help.
okay, so Roderick withdrew his amendment. The current motion on the floor is the approval of the civil engineering field of study without engineering 1201, without engineering 2332, and without chemistry 1411, with the verbiage as is in the mechanical, propose a chemical for engineering task group. That's been, the amendment was approved, so that's been, it's ready for vote if there's no further discussion.
I didn't hear a good closure on the differential equations question. That need to be withdrawn?
It was voted down.
It was voted down.
2320 was? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I move to
We're
vote.
moving to vote because then, I think that means we get to eat lunch. So, all in favor of the motion on the floor, please raise your hand. All against, please raise your hand. Any abstentions? We have 14, right? Okay. Okay, motion passes. And I think this is a good point. Before we start discussion on the
8 a time.
12:30, sure. Okay, so this is a good point to break for lunch. Lunch is over on the table. Let's reconvene at 12:30 and move on to our next agenda item, ACGM discussions. To the ACGM courses. So we'll open the floor for discussions there. Shall we start with Engineering 1201 or Chemistry 14XX or other courses?
That's painful.
Formally voted on the mechanics and materials yet?
We haven't done anything with mechanics and materials. We've just
kind of have that.
discussed, yes. But that would be one we can put on the list to discuss.
Discussion of mechanical engineering, we asked that. Right, so do we even need to?
I think your consideration here would be whether to ask a subsequent committee to look at it through the ACGM process, or whether to undertake to develop a model of it through this committee. That would then go, that you would then add back to the tracks you took it out of.
I guess I'll dive in. And maybe we can start where we left off with chemistry. We see the discussion on, I guess, and me summing it up from my perspective, I think it has always been, from the tuning committee perspective, from the mechanical engineering combat committee perspective, the process kind of moved forward looking at the body of knowledge that was necessary for the students as they moved on from the two-year level to the receiving institution. And that many, in most of the disciplines, those students were either taking, at our level, were taking Chem 1, Chem 2 when we got to courses, or they were taking a combined course for chemistry that was specifically geared for engineering, that was either taught by within the chemistry department or within chemical engineering if those departments existed at the four-year level. So my thought is that the combination of Chem 1411 plus 1412 would meet the body of knowledge in the engineering disciplines as it's been accepted originally, and the addition of a combined engineering course serves two purposes. One, to teach the specifics and the more specific things for students that are pursuing chemical engineering or applied chemistry for engineering. And second, it reduces the credit number hour requirement, which is really, which may be the elephant in the room as the driving force by which a lot of these course combinations are occurring, is because we need to reduce the credit number, the number of credit hours the students are taking. So from the two-year perspective, I would see both of those options on the table as a viable path forward for me to be able to meet both needs. Those students that are needing the general chemistry requirements, obviously, because I'm not eliminating that for my chemistry department, I have no authority, nor do I want to have to face them if I ever made such a recommendation. And two, for those students that are specifically looking to go into fields like where this combined course is needed, it's useful because there are other precedents for this in other disciplines. That's why there's a thermal engineering for students that are not thermodynamics students. That's why there's a combined statics and dynamics course. This is not new. This is not new ground we're breaking. We're just looking at it in a field that we have not considered at the two-year level before.
Yeah, I agree with what he's saying. We're not all going to be able to do it. I probably will not be able to do it at Kilgore, just like I couldn't do a statics/dynamics class. Not enough people to do it. But I think long as I'd like to see the group that we put together also look at 1411, 1412, and 1465, or whatever we're going to call it, 14XX, and see if, recommendations that we keep them all, but kind of push toward, the idea of going either way, like Roderick's saying. We really need to try to go either way with it, just because some of us just can't teach all of them. But I think it's a good idea to have that as an option in there, in the ACGM, just like we have other options for chemistry.
Okay, good points, and I'm fully in favor of developing the course, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It's just that, just like ABET brings the certification to engineering, ACS brings certification to chemistry programs. So the 1411, 1412 sequence is not disappearing. We need it for those purposes. And also what everybody said, just repeating it again, if you take 1412, you've satisfied any need whatsoever for having this combined chemistry for engineering. So I think that's very true too. The other thing is, as we design this kind of a course, and speaking with Terry Reed about this, we're going to make sure that it can act as a 1411, I don't want to say equivalence, because the material's not going to be totally equivalence, but you can go from this course into 1412. So it's not going to limit a student who wants to explore engineering chemistry from being able to go on and do something else. And for instance, in chemical engineering, you have to take 1412 because that's a prerequisite for organic chemistry and for actually performing adequately in the field. We also have to take physical chemistry, and you can't deny the knowledge you have to be successful in your career further on. So I don't think there's a problem with any of this. We just have to be kind of careful how we craft it and make sure that it meets all the needs that we have.
Other discussion? I believe we need a motion to develop this, right? Okay. Absolutely.
I move that we create a task group within this committee to look at developing this combined, shall we call it a chemistry for engineering, and bring it as a product to the next committee meeting for an overall committee meeting for inclusion or not, or recommendations or whatever. That didn't come out right, but you know what I'm saying.
I like it. I second.
So we need other words in there for a
I like those words.
new ACGM course.
Well, I think it's implicit in the statement that it would be a course added to the ACGM, and the committee would formalize that when it reviewed the task force's
Right, this committee
work.
would formalize that. The task group would just propose.
Any discussion?
I move for a vote.
Second. I don't think that's part of the rules.
Sorry.
All in favor of the motion to create a task group to develop a chemistry for engineers to propose for inclusion in the ACGM, raise your hands. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that one was easy. Next course up for discussion. So the other one that we need, one of the other ones we noted need discussing was Engineering 2332, Mechanics of Materials, which in its current form in the ACGM has no learning outcomes. It has a one-sentence description.
Denise?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Before we do that, do we want to discuss who would be on that task force? Or is that just by volunteer? Or how do they, or people just
Committee
Or-
members may volunteer to be on any task group formed by the committee. To make sure everyone has a chance, we can send out an email inviting those not here to be on such a committee.
Well, it doesn't direct us, we're pretty open, I know there's someone's vested interest in it, and I thought that they might want to make sure they're on the committee. That was my thoughts, just so it,
We'll ask for volunteers here now. That's a good point, and we will also follow up with an email to catch anybody that may want to be involved that's not here right now. So, let me get to my notes here. Volunteers, Dan Lindley.
I have a question. Can we recommend a subject matter expert from our institution to be part of it instead of we individually to be part of it?
Let's see, now, if we are going to have people from outside this committee, Gary, can you speak to this? Can it be still a task group?
No. It would have to become a subcommittee.
That's what I thought, and that would,
Task group is even then. Statute basically says that a task group, a work group, three people in a boat, is a committee, Maybe not that 3 people in the boat thing, but pretty much everything else is a committee. And so, depending on how you're going down this road, but if you start bringing in others, no. Now, if you go, you can name a subcommittee, and as Mindy was alluding, you can get in and call for nominations as a process. You can discuss these things amongst yourselves if that's appropriate, and I guess we could, and I don't know, Mindy, exactly what you and Rex discussed when you all had this, or if the committee writes courses, was the recommendation that just the ACGM put them in there, or were we going to have the ACGM group call in subject matter experts? Did y'all, Mindy and Rex had a meeting prior, prepping for this meeting that I was not involved in. I was in some other meeting. I don't remember what it was. Did y'all discuss it?
well, first, let me address the work group or task group versus subcommittee. The rules differentiate. Subcommittees have to specifically be subject to open meetings, but work groups aren't designated as such. If we invite one content expert outside this committee, we've got to put it out for statewide nominations, okay? Now, in recommending a new course for ACGM, that kind of breaks new ground, I'll be candid. We've never had, a task group and, an FOS committee recommend development of a new course. However, the rules allow for recommendations of a course. My phone's buzzing. I'm sorry for the distraction. Let me just put that in my pocket. The rules do allow for the addition of courses to the ACGM upon recommendation by an advisory committee and approval by the board. We would want this group to exercise that option under the rules and be very specific about what it wants. Now, a subsequent ACGM committee, for whatever reasons, developments in the field down the road or whatever, may make additions to the course, but it can't go in later and take out anything this committee has put into the course that has been approved by the board. Okay? All right.
But speaking to that concern there, there's nothing that says that the task group can't be communicating with the committee, right? And the directionality things are going?
Well, the task group will only, whatever product the task group has to be approved in final form by this committee.
perhaps I could say also that I mean, I would expect we're consulting the subject matter experts in our own departments or colleges or others, and so I think if somebody's on the task force, they can still get I would expect they're consulting the subject matter experts anyway. Back to address.
One possible consideration, is there any interest in just not having the course in the ACGM? Just removing it from the ACGM and leaving it, because there was the representative from Texas A&M believes that it should be an upper-level course, and they teach it at the upper level at Texas A&M. We teach it at the upper level. I thought we were talking about the 233.
We're talking about 14.
We're on the mechanics of how you get the committee done.
Oh, okay. Sorry for the interruption.
Sorry. I just was trying to close out the other.
To look for volunteers. So.
I will
we have
volunteer.
Larry and Dan and John. Absolutely. Taking a preliminary set. Anybody else? This is like in class. Nobody look at her. Okay. It's fine.
I'm going to suggest that someone from an A&M component campus participate in this, since they're the instigators. Are you, Larry, you on it?
Well, I'm from an A&M system campus, but we're a system campus, but we're sister. We're not component. In other words, like we're not UT or A&M Galveston. So our requirements are different than College Station. But or maybe we can get somebody. Anyway, I would do the best I could to represent them as well, perhaps.
Yeah, I will participate, so.
Okay, I think that makes for a good preliminary set of, let's see, do we have a good mix there? All right, we can even it out a little bit. All right, so now let's move on to mechanics of materials. ENGR 2332. In the ACGM, if anybody doesn't have the ACGM right in front of them, the 3-hour version, there's also a 4-hour version that was deleted in spring of 16, but it has no prereqs, no learning outcomes, and a 1-sentence course description. So, discussion on 2332.
I think we need to do the same thing we were doing before, talk about the task force. How it got in there with just one sentence, I don't know either. I mean, honestly, there must have been like 2:30 in the afternoon. But we've done that here before, too. But I think it really does need to have prerequisites. It needs to be looked at from a group perspective. And that would be if we're going to leave it. If we're going to leave it in, then it needs to be upgraded. It needs to be something that has got the right wording in it and the prereqs and all that stuff.
I wanted to address Forrest's comment on the deletion of 2332. And I do believe, as with others, I agree that modification of 2332 is necessary. In fact, I am challenged because actually the deletion of the 4 credit hour option creates more problems for me than it solved. I also had the need for the receiving institutions near me that are accepting 2332 with the prerequisite changes that we made. We're needing a lab component. We're missing a lab component of that class because there's a strength of materials laboratory that followed on with it. The problem that we have is the lack of flexibility to deliver the course versus the opposite. I don't support its deletion from the ACGM simply because we teach it. I do believe that the changes need to be made. In fact, in our curriculum committee, we flagged the fact that this course has no prerequisite, and we put one on it. So I would I certainly agree that either through this committee or some task group of that, we need to address its curriculum, its prerequisites. We also need to address its learning outcomes. It was a product of the Mechanical Engineering Tuning Compact. It hasn't existed in the ACGM all these years on its own. It was a course that was added then. They just didn't place learning outcomes with it for whatever reasons, I don't know. Because once again, those committees are least common denominator when they try to come to a consensus. And that might have been as good as it got. So a task force to address this course, I think, would be appropriate as well, but also to look at its credit configuration and lab component, because I don't have that. And that's what's missing as well. But there are some 4 years too that still teach it at the 2000 level.
We don't have a lab component with it. We have individual labs that address but it's not a component of this course. This is just, for us, a lecture course.
Right, and a point, what we do in, of course, organic chemistry, because there are schools that want 3 hours and schools that want 4 hours, what we do is we separate the two courses. So we have a 3-hour lecture and a 1-hour lab, and I think that would be pretty easy to put in.
But now, if this task force adopts, whatever this task force would adopt, would that make it part of this field of study then? Is that the procedure then?
That's a good clarification to ask for. The relevance of a task force or task group, work group, to consider learning outcomes and prerequisites for 2332 would be that you are then, as a main committee, going to look at the task group's product, add to it, change it any way you want to, as a prerequisite for considering it for inclusion back into the tracks. You don't have carte blanche to go in and edit ACGM courses that you're not considering for a disciplinary track. You have to leave now, Michael.
Motion.
Okay, Dr.
Passed.
McGinnis's name tag having been added back, we can proceed.
So, who's got the motion words?
Can you make a motion?
I've been told that I can. It's dangerous, but. Yeah.
Or somebody can speak for him. Okay.
I make a motion that we form a task group within this within this committee to look at 2320 and its configuration, making 2332.
ENGR 2332.
ENGR 2332, looking at its ACGM and also at the potential of adding a lab component, separately numbered.
So can we want to more than look at it? What do we want to do?
Add prerequisites and learning outcomes. Prerequisites, lecture lab.
Modify.
That's lecture lab configuration. Yeah. Right.
Yes, it would. If you added a lab component, 2132, say, it would add that to the ACGM if it went forward as a recommendation of an FOS disciplinary track. You would have grounds to offer it.
Okay, so
I second the motion.
the motion as I have it is form a task group to modify ENGR 2332 to include prerequisites, learning outcomes, and the possibility of adding 2132 as a lab component. And Larry Peel.
I second in that form.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, say, raise your hand. All opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous. All right, next order of business. Oh, let's be consistent.
Let's volunteer.
Out of the current pool of participants, do we have volunteers to serve on this committee? Forrest? Okay. Okay.
All right.
Who else?
Dan McDonald, Michael, and did Rachel also?
Rachel did.
What's his last name? McGinnis. So the preliminary volunteers, Forrest, Dan, McDonald, Michael, and Rachel. Michael McGinnis and Rachel Zhang. Okay, very good. And again, that will be sent out to the remainder of the committee for additions or decides they want to be involved on their way home. Okay.
I think we've got 23. We need to.
Correct. So going through the ones that were previously mentioned in the comments of the other field of studies, ENGR 2307, 2107, which is the fundamentals of circuits. In the mechanical, it looks like they discussed restoring that because it was removed from the ACGM. That one is because it was removed.
2307, 2307, 2107, and 2407 was the combination of lecture lab that course was the fundamentals of circuit analysis. It was basically circuits for non-electrical engineers. It was a product of the mechanical engineering subcommittee compact. It was touched again in the mechanical engineering tuning, the subsequent tuning committees, and what the subsequent mechanical engineering tuning committee did was they voted originally to just accept, they kind of reversed course and voted to accept 2305 instead of this combined course. It met the fate of being deleted because no one was, very few, if any, two-year colleges had ever taught. As a matter of fact, I was guilty of the same thing since the four-year colleges were taking 2305 for mechanical engineering. No one ever offered it. And then when the coordinating board saw the metrics for it, we saw that no one was taking it. When this started off, the course was already scheduled for deletion when this committee began. So it serves as the breadth of knowledge course for mechanical engineering. The question is whether or not it is applicable, because many of the ME for mechanical engineering, they are wanting that breadth of knowledge because Circuits 1 only covers, AC. I mean, well, DC and part of AC, and since there is no Circuits 2, we cannot create a body of knowledge for the student, that total body of knowledge. So that's kind of sort of the history behind where that course is. And
the only difference I see between the two is the 2307 has electric motors in it, as opposed to the 2305.
Depth course. So 2305 is depth. 2307 was depth, is breadth. So there was motors, but then there was really no way to fit all of that into 2305 because it was very intensive in circuit analysis techniques, all those things for EE. So that's what really electric circuits was. Like I said, as an undergraduate, the students that were taking mechanical engineering took circuits 1 and circuits 2, and then they went on into the mechanical program and they were okay. But once again, reduction of credit hours creates this combined course. And it is not the same level. A student taking this course isn't prepared for upper division in EE.
Aside from the motors, I think it's up to the instructor, using the academic freedom, he could decide on how much of circuits he wants to emphasize and how much of other things he wants to. But I mean, that's why I voted for including it. I have no objections. We teach the 2305, and I'll take 2307. I think you'll have trouble maybe filling the class if, no? Okay.
As I said, my position in this is unique, but as I said, I'm a proponent of the flexibility that all the colleges have, because there are colleges that can teach 2307, that's great. If there are colleges that teach 2305, that's fine. But it helps colleges where the receiving institution that will not take circuits because it doesn't have enough breadth, it gives me the flexibility to offer for those institutions.
Which, there are senior colleges that won't take?
Correct.
Which ones are not taking it?
I try not to name, but it is correct. There are senior institutions that will not take 2305 for mechanical engineering. And those are many of the same institutions that voted to remove it that voted to put this back into the compact. So not without precedent.
And I need to ask a clarification here. We're discussing 2307, 2107, and 2407. Under the agenda item of considering recommended changes to ACGM courses that have been contained in approved disciplinary tracks. Now, it seems to me that you're kind of over into, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of over into discussing whether it or not it belongs in mechanical. Am I right about that?
I guess my question in bringing it up was whether or not, was this in the notes a change that was moving forward, or was this something we still had to address? That it's deleted, so did this move forward with the addition being made, or this being reinstated, or was it something we needed to discuss?
The meeting in April approved mechanical engineering with the two changes noted in this column, restoring 2307 and developing 14XX. So, it's not up for debate whether or not this should be restored to the ACGM and included in mechanical engineering.
Then I withdraw all of that stuff I just said, except for the parts that were really good.
But we're debating whether we restore it, yes?
No, I'm saying that it was already.
That's already,
Accepted.
you would have to revisit mechanical engineering as a track. Okay.
So 2407
Will be restored.
electric circuits course.
I'm sorry, I'm on page 13 at the bottom. There was an amendment by Crowder to reinstate 2307 into the mechanical engineering field of study. Move to adopt motion with Reed's amendment to include engineering 2305 and 2405, and that failed. So it's not in the field of study.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, correct.
It's not in the field of study, so it's,
If you will look on page 14. I see in the motion by Crowder, modify existing engineering agreement, in other words, the subcommittee's recommendation, to remove 2305 and add 2307, 2301, and add chemistry for engineers and remove 1411. It did go into that final motion, which did pass.
So there is no 2305. That was removed from mechanical. 2307, 2107 was to be restored, and I guess and that's where my question
Assuming there's nothing on page 15 or 16.
There might be something on page 142, if you will take a look. It was taken out of the ACGM. This committee voted to restore it. Now, in considering recommended changes, you can form a task group to look over the old description. But I thought at the time it was acceptable as previously written.
If we look on page 16 now, because that, it goes even further.
Yes.
And it says, motion by Andreas, mechanical engineering field of study contains university physics, 3 semesters of calculus, separate courses in statics, dynamics, 2307/2407, so it doesn't have the lab. Okay, but previously you'd called it 2107. Okay, okay. And that's that one passed? Okay.
Was there a confusion? One was talking about combined statics and dynamics, and the other one was talking about the circuits? I think there's,
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah. Remove 2332 with no provision to do what we're proposing now.
So,
Okay, so if
2405.
if there's not some alternate universe, then the engineering 2307/2407 was adopted as a yes. Oh, boy, okay.
Then removed 2332.
Which is the way it is on here, right?
2332 was removed with that provision, that the prerequisites to be touched.
It doesn't say that, there's no, doesn't have any provision.
Why don't we have to do that here?
The committee that will review and develop a
New
workup.
course? So we can just say stick it back in.
This one already previously existed. Chemistry for engineers does not have a previous life as an AC.
So I think the confusion then, does that now mean that we don't need any of this last 10 minutes of discussion, and it does contain, I think this is what John was asking, the mechanical engineering field of study does contain ENGR 2307/2107 or 2407, whichever version they take.
That is correct. That's what the record indicates that the committee adopted.
Yes.
I'd like to make a recommendation here. We really kind of tie ourselves into a knot if we have like 2307, 2407. We should have 2307 plus a 1307, is that what it is? 2107. We need to make sure we
That's what exists. That's what currently exists in the ACGM. That's
Right.
what's going to be restored.
Okay, that's not how I read it here.
It's going to be restored.
Right. Those current descriptions, as they exist, would be reinstated.
Okay, and it includes the 1 hour lab
That's
if
correct.
they should take it.
That's correct.
Okay, okay.
It's 3-1, or you can offer it as a combined 4 hour.
Can I ask you another question, Denise? If we go ahead and finish this, which we will, we'll finish this task group study on these 2332, at the point it comes back to the committee, can we at that point restore it to the mechanical engineering track, should we choose to?
Yes, you can. You're only doing it so that you can consider putting it back in those tracks that you have removed it from.
Not in the mechanical track right now.
What is not in there?
There is.
Yes.
Mike?
Somebody remember what's the prerequisite for this course?
It had the same calculus 2 and physics, university physics 2. If I'm,
For the 2307, calculus.
2307 had as a prerequisite Physics 2326. It had as a co-requisite the lab.
physics 2 and the lab, its lab. And physics had a calculus requirement, so that brought in calculus.
Requires calculus
Yeah.
1.
No, it has a physics 2 as well.
Physics 2.
Yeah, physics, that has a Calc 2 requirement, so.
Okay, moving on from circuits then. The next item on our list of courses that we were going to discuss was the Engineering 1201. Discussion on that topic?
The committee has previously approved a review of 1201. If you want to see that language again, I think we can probably pull it up for you. Otherwise, you really just have to bring that forward from a meeting 2 years ago or a year and a half ago and include it with your recommendations to the board.
Is it possible that there would be no support for adding it to any of the programs? In which case, why have the task force?
You did not vote to form a task force for 1201. You simply voted to have the ACGM committee review it in a subsequent time.
Well, I think what we would do probably on all of these courses in 1201 and 2332 and whatever else you got on the list would probably be to assemble a task group under the sort of the auspices of ACGM to look at these courses, course descriptions, and it would be made up of folks from engineering to look at these courses, and then whatever recommendations they make would go back to ACGM. They'd also come back to you guys. So we could do some of that in tandem, but ultimately y'all would have the sort of the final recommendation on that.
Rex, I need to ask for clarification. The rules say that if an advisory committee recommends a course or makes changes and the board approves it, it goes to the ACGM committee as an advisory item, but it does not need the ACGM subsequent approval. That's what I understood. That's what I understood to be the case. Okay. That's why I needed to ask for clarification. Thank you.
We've done a couple of task groups. Do we want to do another one on this one or not? I mean, are we going to leave it up to ACGM, leave it up to where it is right? I got a feeling that the two-year colleges are okay with where it is right now, but none of the four-year colleges are. So I guess I'm kind of concerned that we're going to leave it to the ACGM committee that's just going to say, well, we'll leave it the way it is. Because right now, I don't think it's acceptable for us. So I don't know
I'm sorry, I didn't say anything about leaving anything just to the ACGM
No,
committee.
that's not what I meant either.
Oh.
What I meant was, we just did 2332, and we said we're going to look at it, because it needs to have prereqs and some other things, and we put a task group under this subcommittee. But then we went ahead and did basically the same thing for that chemistry. And now, what exactly are we saying we're going to do at 1201? Maybe I'm confused.
Some history might be good here. When you made the recommendation that a group or a committee be formed to look at updating 1201, you included it, you made that recommendation with the statement, to be considered for future inclusion in an engineering field of study. And it isn't in any current field of study that you've adopted, unless you believe that you will come back and add it to one of these 4 disciplinary tracks, or all of them, or some of them. You really don't have grounds yourself to consider it, so it's up to this committee whether you believe you want to task group 1201 and put it back in one of the 4 tracks you've approved.
It's, from listening to the discussion from the way I'm filtering it, it would seem to me that we should just leave 1201 alone, because there's been no enthusiasm. I have nothing against introduction to engineering. I'm all for, the content that's in this is, I'm sure the students benefit from it. I know they do, but we all run our introductory courses so differently that to find common ground, I think it's been, we resisted this before we had the disciplinary groups. We resisted this within the disciplinary groups. So I don't see a groundswell that even if the AGCM committee reviewed it, and maybe they would, I don't see it's going to change the dynamic of the discussion.
I agree with you, John. I want to draw a distinction, and if it exists or doesn't, that inclusion or non-inclusion of courses in the field of study does not mean that those courses should not be in the ACGM, because those other courses that exist in the ACGM are for us to teach and apply them wherever we need them. So I certainly do not see the, and I agree, 1201 was the most contentious course to come out of the compact agreement. It was one of the most highly debated courses in the tuning compact, and even here we find very little consensus for all the reasons that you had mentioned. And from my perspective, I don't see a good way forward to incorporating a course in Introduction to Engineering unless that is an introduction to every discipline. And then you are still having to tailor that toward the receiving institution. So, and Mindy made a very valid point. Since 1201 is not included in any of the field of study tracks, I think it may not be a worthwhile discussion for us to even take it up unless we are looking to ultimately include it, which most of the heads nodding in the room say that that's probably not going to be a possibility. So we may be able to either dodge the bullet or kick the can down the road for 1201, because I don't see a consensus here to do anything with it.
So let me see if I can understand. So you're saying we feel like it's important, but how we implement it is so different that we don't want it in the field of study, but we do want it in the ACGM. My other question is, for the two-year schools, for the two-year schools, do you want it in the field of study so that you have, I don't know, what's the word, pressure? That's not the right word, but anyway, reason to offer it? I mean, if it's not in the field of study, does that mean the two-year schools cannot offer it, and then the students are hurt, or does it make any difference?
As long as it's in the ACGM, a 2-year can offer it.
Okay. Because I think we all understand it's important. It's just how it's used in different schools.
I also believe some of the four-year school do accept this 1201 Prairie View accepted, and I heard that some other school accepted as well. So it's not unanimously agree, but some do.
We accept it, but we have, our current version is 2 one-semester courses. I'd actually prefer to go back to the old 1201, but under our current university requirements there, but we do accept the 2 credit to substitute for the 2 single credit courses.
Would, however, still like, even though it's not included in the field of studies, I do agree with the original recommendation for the ACGM or someone to take up with input, someone to take up this, 1201, because there are some things that need to happen on our end to make this course work for us. It's credit hour configuration. Even if there were different ways to offer 1201 as introduction to mechanical, introduction to electrical, introduction to civil. If we had that flexibility, I think we would have better outcomes with the 2-year colleges, because one of the proposals going back to the tuning committee was to create a 1201, then plus some 1-hour discipline-specific introduction that combined together would fit the bill. So 1201 plus 1 hour would be introduction to mechanical, 1201 plus 1 hour would be introduction to some. So there were a lot of thoughts that were going into possible solutions. I would like some group to visit that, to once again come out of that with viable options for the 2-year colleges to pursue it, even if those are not included in the field of studies.
I think the current version of 1201 is so general that anyone could tailor it to any specific field. If I was working with our partnering universities and we felt the need to emphasize, say, mechanical, concepts within the intro, I think the current version would allow that.
Just need more credit hour but the credit hour configuration is a problem.
Yeah. Whenever the 1101 was removed, that was problematic for our institution. I
Credit
agree
hour
that the
flexibility, I think, is needed.
That I agree with.
So we'll bring forward the original recommendation, but no further actions needed here. Okay. Other items related to recommended changes to ACGM courses? All right, then let's move on to the next item, overall recommendations to the coordinating board.
And this item on the agenda allows you to, assuming you're wrapping up your business, your charge today, to review your recommendations to date and, just kind of send them forward as a package to the board. Now, you do still have remaining business, and we will have at least one subsequent meeting. But you do have room here to discuss your recommendations to date.
Are we on item 7 now?
Yes.
Okay, so I would like to make a motion that this committee, at a future meeting, reconsider the field of study for electrical engineering. And the reasons I have for that are there are at least 2 courses on this field of study, the Engineering 2406 and 2304, that are very, very problematic for us. And the problems are that as our program at the University of Texas has changed the curricular content and the content of the expectations of the students coming into those courses far exceed the way the AGCM is structured. And the material that's presented in Programming for Engineering doesn't meet the needs of the students as they go forward in our program.
So, so 2406,
John, 2406 is digital, which
okay,
is
2304, and then it's for the reason of 2304 that I would like us to reconsider this, and we can't reconsider it with a vote today, but I'd like to put it on the table for a future meeting.
John, a clarification. Is the concern that programming for engineers needs to be revised as a course, or is the concern that it is intrinsically not adequate to?
Needs to be reevaluated for the content.
Okay, so you would like to essentially under item 6 then have this course revised, or do you question, or are you wanting to have the track reviewed again?
Okay, I thought I had to review the track, so we,
As it stands, is this disciplinary track acceptable except for Engineering 2304?
depends who you ask, but if you're asking me, I would like to have a task group to look at programming for engineers 2304. The rest of it is acceptable as it is.
Okay.
Item 6, okay. Apologize for that. So I would like to make a motion, if we can, back in item 6, that there's a task force look at the content of programming for engineers, engineering 2304.
Discussion on this item?
So, John, if that 2304 gets, I assume you'd want to be on that committee, subtask group or whatever it is? If, okay.
I guess I have to, yes.
Doesn't have to be, but if it were changed, would that, this is, the reason I'm asking this is the reason we dropped it from the chemical engineering track is because we felt that it wasn't meeting the needs there either. What you're saying is, and I'm asking this, it's a common course number, right? 2304 exists in chemical engineering programs, it exists here. Is this going to be something which would allow us to open it up, you think, to the chemical engineering again?
I can't answer that. But I can, because I have an incomplete, I know what's in chemical engineering, what our expectations are in programming, and I know they're quite different from the expectations of electrical and computer engineering. I just don't know the specifics of those differences. And I will not read you the comments that are written in front of me about the content of Engineering 2304 and its appropriateness for electrical and computer engineering, because it's on the record. So only that it's not what is in 2304 does not prepare electrical and computer engineering students to be successful later in the curriculum. That is a polite way of saying what's written here.
Right, but should the task group be successful, then I would want us to go back and revisit to see whether it'd be successful for chemical engineering too. Might not be, but we don't know what it is.
Well, my motion is for the electrical and computer engineering section right now, so.
On the floor that's been seconded was to form a task group to update the content of Engineering 2304. You want more words in there?
Well, for the committee to examine the content of 2304 and ask if it's appropriate for the way electrical engineering is taught, future directions of education electrical engineering. I think that's the wording I would choose.
Is it possible to bring some specific deficits into the motion? For example, 2332, the lack of prerequisites.
I have been asking for those for a week. No, I cannot bring specifics into the motion. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Prerequisites would be a good starting point, though, because 2304 doesn't have any. So you can't solve the right level of problem as it is here.
Could we just
And
delete it?
if you get those, we can always inform the task group with them. So that'd be helpful, I think.
Yes.
I mean, do you-
Man, I
do you want-
recognize you just don't have them now.
Task
so.
force
Do you want to leave some type of programming in, or do you want to delete it from the, consider that it be deleted? Would that solve all your problems? Just do like what Chemical did, just got rid of it.
Can't now.
It's accepted.
I
can't
don't,
now.
I don't,
Okay.
wait. We cannot revisit, I'm bringing this up under Section 6. If we want to delete it, we have to bring that forward for a motion in a future meeting.
Correct.
We can't make that decision today.
So if we can fix it, then let's fix it
I agree.
to become mutually agreeable.
So my motion is to revisit the content of engineering, programming for engineers because it's only in this one,
That's correct.
right? It's only in electrical engineering.
Pretty sure it's learning outcomes.
Is there other discussion? Excuse me? It does have learning outcomes. Is there more discussion on this item? Okay, so the motion to update the content of 2304, particular to make it more appropriate to the EE curricula, seconded by Roderick. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Volunteers?
I volunteer.
Oh, a volunteer. You don't have to.
You better.
Unless you want me to volunteer for you. And Larry, did you raise your hand on this one? Oh, okay.
We took that as a bid.
It's like when I was with my dad at,
When the hand goes up, it's a volunteer.
farming auction. He told me to sit on my hands, so I didn't. So I should have been sitting on my hands.
I think that counts.
I'll volunteer for this one too. I like this one. So the volunteers are Roderick, myself, Lawrence, and John.
And, yeah, Larry.
Larry. Sorry. Oh, I keep them all separate in my notes.
It's a security thing. I just learned to use Lawrence.
I do have a couple of questions about item 7 still.
Okay, oh, yes, okay.
Now officially on to item 7.
Oh, no, we're on
ahead.
that.
Martin.
So we're looking at specifically 4 fields of engineering. So any fields outside of this, are they're not going to apply, none of this applies to them. Is that correct?
4 disciplinary tracks have been adopted by this committee.
But in 4 of these, there's some commonalities, like with the mathematics and physics. Would we be able to have those be part of a more general field of study? So any programs that lie outside of these 4, at least the math and the physics would apply to them?
Well, that was a previous recommendation on the part of this committee, the calculus physics. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
And the committee can, bring this forward as as part of its final approved recommendations to the board, just as it can bring forward its 1201 recommendation. So yes, that can be done. Thought you were asking whether we wanted to develop some more disciplinary tracks. I apologize.
No, all right. Just to cover, because if a program that's not named one of these, say general engineering, university has a general engineering program, then that's named differently than this, and so, but it still might be useful to have the calculus and the physics, apply in terms of this field of study transfer.
I'd certainly support that approach. Looking at the disciplines we offer right now, only one has been covered in our discussion, and the other 4 aren't in at all. And so at least my original vision, looking at this, was be that we'd have a generic plus additional for the named, the named major areas. So I think we should have a generic engineering that's brought up.
We do.
No. Our first bid was that, like that.
Go ahead.
But the first grouping of 10 courses still stands, doesn't it?
That proposal, if memory serves me correct, after public comments, that proposal was voted on and then was rejected out of hand. That was the proposal. That's right. That was the proposal that went forward for public comments, and we got in all the public comments. We came back for a meeting, there was questions from everywhere, and then that was voted on, and then that was voted down. That's actually that's why we're still here. Because there was nothing going forward after that, and because that was not adopted, then we had to either come up with something else, or the existing field of study that was on the books would remain in force. So it got voted down.
Thought we were still here
Wait,
because we wanted more.
I'm sorry, I believe you, but I thought someone proposed, well, then let's do a bazillion different ones, and then we formed these for some of these disciplinary tracks, but I didn't think for those that weren't in the disciplinary discussion, I thought by default that other set of courses applied.
Would it be helpful to this committee if I reviewed the meeting video and clarified whether or not the committee voted to abandon that generic track? Okay, I will do that. I'll confirm. We have a difference of memories here.
I don't really remember. I don't have.
Okay. Okay, I'll confirm that for all of you, and if you want to reconsider, as Martin suggests, that generic calc physics recommendation with your disciplinary tracks, the committee can certainly agree to do that at a subsequent meeting.
And I think to narrow down your reviewing the June 19th, 2015 meeting, in my notes I had Phys 1 and 2 agreed, Cal 1, 2, and 3 agreed. With a cautionary advisory statement to complete all of your calculuses.
The meeting afterwards.
I'll get a clarification out for you. You can, as needed, consider that generic recommendation at a subsequent meeting.
The August 14th, the one after it,
August 14th might be the meeting that it occurred in.
after we agreed.
I'll
Might
take a
have
look.
unagreed.
I'll review. I'll get down to the bottom of it.
Okay. So all other engineerings would then fall back to the default one?
Yeah.
Okay, other items under Part 7, overall recommendations.
There are
Opportunity
no
for
other
discussion.
recommendations, or no other items raised under 7.
Then we're good.
We're ready, we're
Okay.
just basically ready.
Okay, then moving on to Item 8, discussion of timeline and future meeting dates.
Let me just tell the committee informationally on this one that I have tentatively reserved a couple of meeting dates in January in case you did have subsequent business to this meeting today. As you do have subsequent business, I will go ahead and put out a doodle poll. We can meet in January, we can meet sometime in the second half of February. This committee will need time for these task groups to form and do their work, too. Is a January meeting feasible, or do you think we need to have a February meeting?
And
Yeah, I think February would be, because the task groups those sub-task committees groups need to get together and work out all those things for presentation, so we need at least that much time for them to.
And keep in mind that some of the committee members' terms expire in March, so let's finish by then, back it up from there, give ourselves a little bit of room.
Okay, I'll send out a doodle poll expeditiously.
So maybe the thing to do is this, schedule that second meeting close to when before anyone rolls off, and then back up a few weeks from that for the target, to give us time for the task forces to meet and hear the deliberation at a meeting, and then if we have to come together again, we can come together as a group.
And you will have to come together again as a group. So let me look at February and see what we can dig out of it. Fridays have been best, and I scanned the Friday dates in February, but let me look at some other dates, and we'll try to get something out to you.
Okay.
That brings us to item 9, adjournment. Do I have a motion? Larry,
I motion.
Did you scratch your ear?
Oh, yes.
That counts.
Scratch your ear.
Larry has a motion to adjourn.
Second, the other Larry.
The other Larry, his other brother Larry.
Maybe it's supposed to be Larry and 2 Darryls, but
Yeah.
either way, we'll take it.
Where's Darryl?
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion is, meeting is adjourned.
That's great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.